Coming up today, Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo is under siege over the so-called bribery list scandal. Calls are growing for his resignation as more allegations against him emerge, this time in a local daily. Holding their first high-level security talks in 5 years, Japan tells Korea it will respect the country's sovereignty in matters related to defense and security. Plus, the UN Security Council passes an arms embargo targeting Yemen's Houthi rebels who rule much of the country. These stories and more coming right up. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, April 15th here in Seoul. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Once again, our starting point is the bribery list scandal that's shaking Korea's political landscape to its core. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo faced another round of allegations. A local newspaper reported additional details from an interview with businessman Song Wan-jong that took place before his apparent suicide last week. Song told the paper that he gave Lee political funds 2 years ago. Chae-sun starts us off.
Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo says he will be the first to be questioned by prosecutors over allegations he received bribes from Song Wan-jong, a former lawmaker and head of Gyeongnam Enterprises.
If there's evidence of me receiving bribery from him, I should step down. But it's not true.
He also denied reports published in a local daily, the Gyeongyang Shinmun, in which Song claimed he delivered 30 million won, or some $27,000 to Lee before by-elections in April of 2013. Song was found dead last Thursday, carrying a list naming 8 current and former politicians, along with amounts of money. The Prime Minister was on the list, as well as the President's Chief of Staff, Lee Byung-gi, but no specific amount was written beside their names. As investigators dig into Song's suspicious money exchanges, Lee may become the country's first Prime Minister to be questioned by prosecutors. They're also looking into claims that Song kept a secret ledger of the bribes. President Park on Sunday called for the prosecution to conduct an impartial probe according to law and principles. Asked about the Gyeongyang report, President Park's spokesperson said there's nothing the presidential office can say and that it's time to wait for the outcome of the prosecution's investigation. Ruling party floor leader Yoo Seung-min said his party's Supreme Council agreed the prosecution should start questioning the Prime Minister. Opposition party leader Moon Jae-in, meanwhile, called on both the Prime Minister and the Presidential Chief of Staff to voluntarily step down and submit to prosecutor questioning. Choi-Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's National Assembly has adopted a parliamentary resolution condemning Japan for its repeated claims over Korea's Dokdo Island and its attempts to distort history. Our Ji Myung-gil has the details.
The parliamentary resolution that passed at Tuesday's plenary session denounced Tokyo's recent approval of more Japanese school textbooks containing claims to the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island.
The Korean people, the National Assembly, and the Foreign Ministry need to work together in order to foster a systematic approach to counter Japan's provocations over Korea's Dokdo Island and distorting history.
The resolution urged the Japanese government to withdraw its approval of all textbooks that say Dokdo Island belongs to Japan, calling the books a clear violation of Korea's territorial sovereignty. The resolution raised concerns that the distorted and fabricated history textbooks will cause strife between future generations in Korea and Japan. The Assembly also expressed regret over Japan's double-standard attitude. Tokyo had said it would work with Seoul to mark the 50th anniversary of diplomatic normalization between the two countries. However, recent events, such as the textbook approvals, indicate an unwillingness to recognize history and Korean sovereignty. The resolution also warned that already frayed relations between Seoul and Tokyo will be further impaired by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's continued visits to the Yasukuni War Shrine and Japan's refusal to take responsibility for the sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Senior officials from Korea and Japan met for a rare round of defense talks in Seoul on Tuesday. The meeting, which was the first since late 2009, focused on Japan's moves to revise its security laws. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
The so-called 2+2 meeting held in Seoul on Tuesday was the first high-level security talks between Korea and Japan in more than 5 years. The near 3-hour meeting involved 2 defense and foreign ministry officials from the two sides. Korea asked Japan to refrain from raising concerns of neighboring countries by maintaining transparency in the process of modifying its security laws and revising its defense guidelines with the United States. They stressed Tokyo must seek Seoul's consent before pushing ahead with any matter that involves security on the Korean peninsula. To that, Japan said it will remain transparent with its activities and respect Korea's sovereignty. A senior official at Seoul's foreign ministry said Tokyo also suggested holding a meeting between their defense ministers as soon as possible, to which Korea said the issue will be taken under review. The security talks between the two neighbors were suspended since late 2009 due to strained bilateral relations over historical and territorial issues. It's also the first in a series of similar talks to be held later this week. Vice foreign ministers from the two sides will meet with their U.S. counterpart in Washington on Thursday, which will be followed by a trilateral high-level security dialogue. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And the United States has reacted positively to those high-level security talks between South Korea and Japan. Speaking during a press conference on Tuesday, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken said Seoul-Tokyo relations are back on the right track. Following Tuesday's rare round of defense talks in Seoul, Blinken said Washington shares a mutual goal with the two countries in tackling common threats, including North Korea's nuclear program. He added that the U.S. wants to play a role in reducing the renewed tension between Korea and Japan over historical and territorial issues. Now, Blinken is scheduled to hold, as we just heard in the previous report, a trilateral meeting with Seoul's first Vice Foreign Minister Jo Tae-yong and his Japanese counterpart Akitaka Saiki in Washington on Thursday local time on issues related to regional security in Northeast Asia. The Korean government is expected to convey its firm stance regarding Japan's decision to exercise its perceived right to collective self-defense. Deputy Defense Minister Ryu Jae-sung has been meeting with his U.S. counterpart David Helvey in Washington for their annual Korea-U.S. Integrated Defense Dialogue. The Korean official is expected to clearly express Korea's stance to the U.S. that Japan must win explicit consent from Seoul if it wants to respond to contingencies on the Korean peninsula. The talks, set to run through Wednesday, are also expected to centre on strengthening deterrence against North Korea's missile and nuclear threats, as well as measures to follow up on last year's agreement to postpone the transfer of wartime operational control over South Korean forces from Washington to Seoul. An Asiana Airlines plane overran a runway while landing at Japan's Hiroshima airport on Tuesday evening, leaving more than 20 people with minor injuries. Japanese officials say Flight 162, carrying 74 passengers and 7 crew members, failed to make a safe landing when it touched ground at around 8 p.m. local time, a little over an hour after its departure from Korea's Incheon International Airport. The accident prompted officials to temporarily close the airport. It is back up and open now, though. Video footage shows the aircraft's body actually flipped around with its nose pointing to the direction that it had come from. Japan's Transportation Ministry says it's looking into reports the Airbus A320 may have hit an object on the runway during landing. The UN Security Council has approved an arms embargo against Houthi rebels in chaos-ridden Yemen. 14 members of the Security Council voted in favour of the resolution, Russia being the only abstention. It's hoped the resolution can end the Houthis' military campaign against Yemen's embattled president and the rebels' attempts to overrun the strategic Gulf nation. The resolution demands all Yemeni parties, especially the Houthis, end violence and resume UN-brokered negotiations. Also in Yemen, the country's branch of al-Qaeda has announced that its top cleric has been killed in a drone attack. In a Twitter post, the group said Saudi national Ibrahim al-Rubashi was killed along with other unnamed members of the group on Sunday. Back here in Korea, and the 7th World Water Forum, currently underway in Korea's southern cities of Daegu and Gyeongju, aims to find better ways to tackle water shortage problems around the world. But for businesses in the water industry, it also offers lucrative opportunities in the global water market. Gwon-swa reports.
Trying to find solutions on how to provide the entire world with the water it needs is the main reason participants have gathered at the World Water Forum. But for some, it's more about how to make money out of water.
It's being called the blue gold industry, a market on the rise as water shortages are becoming a global issue. And Korea is furthering its position in the industry by expanding its water management technology and sharing its know-how with the world.
By 2025, the global water market is expected to almost double from what it was worth in 2010. Korea's water market is also on a steady growth path. It's forecast to be worth $10.6 billion in 3 years. One big contributor to the local industry is the state-run Korea Water Resources Corporation, which has been promoting its methods of preserving and distributing safe and clean water.
We are introducing a new paradigm called the Smart Water Management Initiative that aims to utilize ICT in each of our management stages, from the raw water source to our faucets.
K-Water has also proven its competitiveness abroad, with projects in more than 20 countries. At the World Water Forum, it signed a contract with France-based water giant Suez Environment. And it's not the only Korean player in global water treatment.
Doosan is the biggest manufacturer of desalination plants in the world. And what desalination plants do is they create fresh water from ocean water. So this helps alleviate regions that don't have enough water, such as Saudi Arabia, the Middle East.
The Middle East is one of the regions that's seeking more partnerships with Korea in the fight against water shortages.
We have a very good relation with Korea, and the president visited us 2 times in the country, and we have a lot in common in terms of different applications, satellite and nuclear. So we think also the cloud seeding could be also another subject that we could benefit with Korea and share the experience.
Water shortage issues are not just a problem for developing countries anymore. Experts say the blue gold industry in the 21st century could become larger than the black gold or oil industry in the 20th century. Kwon-swa, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund has slashed its 2015 economic growth outlook for Korea by 0.4 percentage points to 3.3%. The IMF's latest World Economic Outlook report cited a drop in Korea's consumer and corporate sector growth expectations. The report says this is denting Korea's overall economic recovery momentum and could lead to less consumer spending and business investment, both of which are vital for growth. In its previous outlook, released in January, the IMF had Korea growing 3.7%, so it's quite a big downgrade. The IMF's latest forecast is far below the Korean government's target of 3.8%, but it is still higher than the 3.1% projected by the Bank of Korea last week. Korea's main stock market, the benchmark Kospi, soared to a 4-year high on Tuesday on the back of steady inflows of foreign capital and expectations for positive corporate first quarter earnings. The bull run has also boosted the value of Korea's stock rich. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
The benchmark Kospi rose 0.61% on Tuesday to close over 2,100 points, the highest level since August of 2011. Market capitalization also hit a new record at about $1.2 billion.
The rally comes on the back of ample global liquidity from quantitative easing in Europe and foreign buying. Appetite for Korean shares are also higher compared to other emerging countries, along with expectations that local companies post better first quarter results.
In Tuesday's trading alone, foreigners bought a net $360 million worth of shares, remaining as net buyers for nearly a week. The recent rally is also putting smiles on the nation's biggest stockholders. According to local conglomerate tracker Jebel.com, 24 Koreans hold more than 1 trillion won, or roughly $910 million in stock assets. Among the big winners is the owner of cosmetics giant Amore Pacific, Seo Kyung-bae. His shares jumped more than 50% since the start of the year to roughly $8.5 billion as of Tuesday. Meritz Financial Group Chairman Jo Jung-ho also saw his equities grow over 40% in the same period, while Chung Mong-jun, the largest stakeholder of Hyundai Heavy Industries, saw about a 30% gain. Analysts say there is room for even more growth on Seoul's bourse in the short term, especially as China is expected to take further stimulus measures in light of its slowed economic growth. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.